What we are gonna do today is go through kind of CMAs and stat reports if you've not used the stat reports in Matrix. We're gonna talk about the different ways. Again, I'm gonna preface this with, do not go back to your office and say, Megan said, okay? I'm gonna teach you what I know. I've been in business 20 years. This is my 20th year. I'm your immediate past president. I don't know everything, but I feel like I know enough to teach you. And you might learn other tips and tricks. There's many ways to go about a CMA, as you're gonna learn. So it's not Megan said, don't go back to your office and somebody says, I do it this way. Well, Megan said, because I don't, we'll get a phone call or a text. I mean, usually I'm right, but there are different ways to go about it. So if you didn't get a handout, there's a stack of handouts on this corner. There's 2 pages to the handout. It's just for you to kind of follow along or take home later. Just trying something to keep me on track, keep y'all on track. So we're just gonna start from the beginning. So when we do a CMA course, we're gonna ask seller the questions. Okay, so I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this. We have a class that we teach for listing sides, but we want to get some questions about the property up front before you start. Because a lot of times you're gonna get an appointment, somebody's gonna call and say, why don't you list my house? And you just say, great, see, there's it too. Well, you need to do a pre-list interview, get some questions out of them. Like, hey, do you have a couple moments for me to ask you a few questions about your property to better prepare for our appointment? And we want to get some information out of them. Have you done any upgrades to your property? If they have, did you pull permits? You might ask, if you rated your house 1 to 10, what would you rate it? And if they say an 8 or a 7, you would ask, what would make it a 10? And that's where you're going to hear, I need new paint or I need new carpet. So we want to try to gather as much information as we can up front. We may want to look up old MLS information. So if they bought the house 2 years ago, we could go on the MLS, pull their old listing, and then cool, we would get to see. If they say they've done no updates, we see some pictures and description. That gives us a general idea of kind of what we're looking at. And then of course, you're going to research the home. We'll get into all that. So also, if you're buyers, you should be doing a CMA. So you should be following the same process for your buyers. Because before you write a contract, I want to make sure I have value, right? Because if I don't, what's the consequences of that? Yeah, the appraisal could come in low and my client can lose a lot of due diligence money if there's due diligence money in the deal. So don't look at this as just a seller thing. This should also be applied to buyers. And again, it's a matter of opinion. So we're going to walk through this. And I guarantee if we all did a CMA on the same property, we're all going to come up with something relatively different within range, hopefully. So we're going to talk about some of that. But again, this is all a matter of opinion. So this is going to be fluid in some of the things I tell you, because obviously it's all going to depend. That will probably get annoying to you at some point when I say it depends. So where do we go to research? So if we start with our research, I have no idea why I made this such a long password. Like, I think it was my bank account. All right, so the first place you may want to go to when you log in, if you've not used some of these, is your Realist. So I will usually go to Realist, click on Realist, and I'll put the property address into Realist just to get some little background information. You could search by address, or you can search by name if you hit search. So again, you could go either way. That you can apply a lot of this to farming and stuff too, but I'm not get off track. And I'm sorry, but I'm blind, so I'll be turning around a lot. Which they are going to give us a cool little monitor so I can see right here. Okay, so what I do when I pull this up is generally I'm just reviewing the information, right? So I see it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I kind of generally look at the square footage because we're going to measure before we list. But if I'm working on numbers, I don't have the measurements right now. So I'm kind of looking at that. I'm verifying if I see multiple owners, right? So if I've only talked to Daniel, like last week I had a listing appointment. There was 2 names here, a man and a woman. Never mention of the woman. I get to the house, still no mention of the woman, and I had to ask about the woman. And he's like, oh, we're going through divorce and she's the devil. Okay. Well, she still has to sign the paperwork if we don't have a quitclaim deed. So even if they have a divorce, if she's been recorded on the deed or title, she's going to have to sign, even with the divorce paperwork. She's either going to have to sign or do a quitclaim. If you're ever unsure, especially as, if you don't have a lot of experience, I would always just send it to the attorney you work with and say, hey, who has interest, who needs to sign? If you ever see an estate here or an heir situation, always run it by your attorney first. Because if they have not gone through probate and you list this house and you get to closing and realize it hasn't been through probate, you're going to get yourself in a little bit of a jam. So if you're meeting somebody and they say, grandma gave me the house, you need to go through the proper channels with an attorney. I'm going to go read through this part, their legal description. I'm looking at the prorated taxes because when I do a net sheet for the seller, right, I need to know how much I'm going to have to prorate the taxes. So this is going to tell me on the realist report. You can also go to the tax site. This is giving you some general information about the house. I do see a discrepancy with square footage, but it's remotely close. It's not crazy. I see bedrooms, bathrooms, kind of verifying. I have 1-car garage. Maybe I forgot to ask them that. There were no photos. Now I know that. Great. And I'm going to scroll down. This is your real AVM value. It's kind of like a Zestimate, but with other closings factored in. So sometimes this is on point and sometimes it is not. I've literally had agents say they just use that to price. You can't really sometimes it's on point. I mean, mine's pretty close, but sometimes it's not. So you can't use that to price. You're going to have to go do your own investigation like we're going to do. And then this is going to give you the history of the listing. So like I said, I can go pull up any of these old MLS numbers to see what the condition of the house was, what were the features of the house, and I could kind of dig into those. So I could just copy and paste this MLS number, put it into Matrix, and pull up that old listing. And then that's going to give me some ideas of condition, pictures, or whatnot. And then you have your sales history. So you'll see who's bought, who's sold. Again, you'll see there's a quitclaim deed because he was married, right? But he had to remove or his name was spelled wrong, whatever. And he quitclaimed his name, correction, and removed her. Okay, but if he had not of, then this person would have to be involved in this transaction. So if you saw 2 people on the deed, but you don't see it anywhere else, you need to address that with your seller, okay? Long before you get to closing in case this person's missing or whatever. And then it kind of gives you a mortgage history and a little bit of an outline. So I just come on here, kind of gather generic information. I can see here there was like another building here. So maybe they didn't mention that on the phone. I might Google Earth it now, right, to see what I'm looking at. Or I'm going to reach back out to that seller. Hey, I'm preparing your numbers for our meeting. Do you happen to have a storage shed or another building in your property, right? So it shows them that you're doing some due diligence before you get there. And it's also helping you with your numbers. Because if I show up and didn't factor in a 20 by 25 metal shed or a wood or a stable or whatever, that can affect your pricing at that appointment. So again, this is just what I use for to kind of do a prelim. Now you can go to like neighborhood profile and it's going to tell you average sales, things like that in the area. You could look at that, but do not use that or the comparables to price. Okay. It's not how we're going to price. You can also go into RPR and that's going to do a similar feature as well. RPR is also going to give you the schools and some other data that you're going to need for when you put in the listing. So if I go to RPR, I could go ahead and put in the address here. RPR is a great tool, and I'm not going to get off track because this is the CMA class, but when I did the MLS class, yeah. But you could do a lot of things in RPR. You could do mailing labels. You could choose pre-foreclosure properties. You can do prospecting from here. You could do postcards from here. You could do, it gives you AI script. So if you pull market reports from here where it says market trends, you can go up to research, do marketing, and it will pull an AI script for you to do marketing stats on. And you can use that for social media, video. It literally does it all for you. This is a really great platform to explore. Some people use it for their CMAs. Y'all got to be really good at it. I wouldn't recommend it because you have to do all manual adjustments. It's just grabbing random comps. It's not doing the due diligence for you. So I would be careful on that. But so if I pull the property again, it's going to, not find. Okay. So it's again going to go over the bedrooms, bath square footage. I'm looking at both just to make sure we're kind of on track. You'll see the RVM value on here was 220, on Realist was 225. So there's a little bit of range on there that you want to look at. It kind of tells you average price per square foot. As you come down, it's going to give you features of the house. So you can look more in depth at like heat pump, things like that. It will tell you what has been listed in the home. It will tell you schools, legal description. So a lot of times people are like, where do I get all the information for my listing? Da da da. Here's all your legal information. It also gives you immediate link to the plat map. So you can pull the plat map. It gives you your school. So Cumberland County has a school link. Barnett County has it through GIS. Hope County is a little bit behind. You could come on here and pull, your schools that you need to research, make sure you're listing it in the right area. Again, it's telling you the owners, how long they've owned it, right? So like going backwards, if you want to farm, you could come into RPR and look for people who've owned their home 10 to 15 years. That's awesome to farm too, because they have a ton of equity more than likely, and that would be a great way to get listings. Anyway, then it goes through any listing history, public records. So I'm just, again, anybody who says they come in and they do a CMA in 10 minutes, they're not doing a full CMA. Because you've got to do research on these properties. So I feel like the deeper you dig in, the more you're going to get a better feel for that property. So RPR is just another option for that. You want to pull the deed. Make sure if you don't know, you can go into your matrix and you go to links, and all the county GISs, register of deeds, everything is right here. So you can go right through the MLS, pull the deed, pull the plat, pull your restrictive covenants, all of those things right through here. So that's another good thing, because if you list a property, you want to make sure you have those covenants, or if you're representing a buyer, you want to make sure you have those covenants, because what if your client wants chickens and you sell them a house and they put down $1,500 due diligence, then you pull the covenants and find out you can't have poultry. Well, guess who's losing the money and who's going to be real upset? And it's going to be upset at you. So make sure you come on and pull your covenants before you write those contracts, because yes, they're a little harder to enforce, but they're there. So this is just another tool, because with your property, I'd say if it's out in the country and it's three acres and it's a listing and it says no poultry or farm animals, I'm going to tell them, hey, you have 3 acres, which is very compelling, but they can't have farm animals or poultry. This could hurt your listing. So you have all that information going into the appointment, right? To position. Pricing and positioning are different. We're going to talk about that during the CMA. And then of course, Google Earth the property. Make sure you're looking at the area around it to get a feel too, because if I go and Google Earth and everything around is horrible, let's say, or maybe there's industrial, I need to take that into account preparing for that appointment when I walk in, because my positioning and pricing might be different based on my environment. But if I just blindly show up at this house and I've done no due diligence and there's a concrete plant over here, there's a farm over here, and my house is stuck in the middle, I didn't properly prepare, right? So Google Earth, make sure you've looked around the area, make sure you're kind of aware of the settings that you're walking into. So then once we've done kind of the footwork, so I had the description of the property. They've told me a little bit. I pulled the old MLS listing. I've looked at photos. I Google Earthed it. I just did all this basic research up front. Now I'm going to start with my CMA. So what we're going to do is, typically you want to start, if you've never been on the YouTube channel for Longleaf Pines, there are 2 appraisal panel videos where the appraisers go in depth of how they choose their comps, why they choose their comps, what they give values for, and why. I highly recommend for you to fully understand CMAs is that you should watch those, because what we think is different what they think. Now, do they have a standard adjustment? No. So I can't tell you bathroom is worth X amount. Okay. We'll talk about that when we get there. But you can understand why they might not adjust for lot size, because they don't a lot of times, because the use is the same. They may not adjust for that tile backsplash, because to them that's not an upgrade, because every other house has it, right? So it's good to understand, those features. But when their basic principles for an appraiser is that we want to start closest to the subject property as possible. So if I have a listing, I want to start first in that neighborhood. So I want to like a very close circle, right? If I don't have enough comps, then I'm going to spread that circle, okay? But I want comps that have closed the closest to my house and within the least amount of market time. Okay, so right now we're looking at 6 months or less. You could probably go to 9 months because our market's been pretty stable for the last 9 to 10 months. But 6 months on average right now is what we're seeing. Okay. If I leave my neighborhood, so if I leave my bubble, the more that I leave my bubble, the house needs to be more exact like mine. Okay. So if I have 1 comp in my neighborhood, it might be a 2-story on a ranch, but I'm going to use it because lot values are similar, price per square footage is similar, all that is similar. When I leave my bubble and I go to the neighborhood across the street, that house better be as identical to my house as I can get because I've left my bubble. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So we're gonna start in the neighborhood. So that property that I have is in Northwoods, right? So we're gonna use Northwoods as our example. It is active. We're just gonna ignore that. It's fine. So we have active, pending, and sold. I usually will check off all three just because I want to get an image, right? So appraisers use closed to price. Okay, so sold is to price, but obviously they're working in arrears. Okay, pending is what I'm looking at because those are going to be my next comps. Okay, so when those close, those are going to be the new comps. So if I list today and two of those pending close the next week, guess what? Those are my new comps. So I want to look at those. I want to be tracking what is happening in pending. And then active is my competition, right? So what am I up against? If it's closed at 200, pending is showing 195, am I going to list at 205? Probably not, because pending and active is showing me differently. So again, pricing, positioning. So that's, I just keep saying that, but I just want to get that out there. So I'm going to start with active, pending, sold to look at. I'm not going to do my CMA with all three of those, but I want to look at it, okay? And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to do my neighborhood. So that neighborhood is Northwoods. So I'm going to do Northwoods and I'm going to go to Hope County. And I'm going to hit results. So you'll see that there's 5. I'm going to hit results. Now you'll see what we're looking at. So if you don't, you probably don't see closed square footage on your search, right? When you want to add fields to your homepage, you're going to go up to this gray bar and you're going to left click and you're going to insert a column. Okay. So this is where I might insert maybe, I'll do the livable square footage. Oh, well, not when you do it that way. So if we're dealing with, now that we've merged with the triangle, some of the data doesn't come across because they close their listings out different than us. So you always want to add livable square footage, the livable heated square footage, because that's how they close theirs out and that's how it's also listed. So if you're just doing closed square footage like that, if it's a triangle listing, it's not going to show up. So if it's a closed triangle listing, you're going to see closed square footage 0, blank. You have to add this column of the livable square footage in order to have that square footage show up. Does that make sense? Okay. So now I'm going to review them, right? So I see square footage. So mine was 13 something, I think. So I'm looking at all of these. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through and I'm going to look and dig into each one compared to mine. So this one's mine. So we're not going to look at that one. This one's 1,100 square feet. The next one's 1,500. And then I have 12 and 12. So just off the bat, looking at it, which one is the last one I would want to look at?
15.
It could be the 15 or the 11 because they're 200 square feet difference. The max they want to go is 10%. Okay. So if my square footage is 1352, 10% is really where they're pushing their max of adjustment. 20% they may go to if there's no other comps closer. Okay. So keep that 10% range in your mind with the 20% being like absolutely, because after that you become a different product. If I'm, a 2,000 square foot house and I'm adding 400 square feet, that's an extra room, it's additional room. So, keep in mind that 10 to 20%, 10 being ideal. Because the further away, remember, the further away you go from being like yours, that might be a less desirable comparable. Okay. Now we've all had an appraisal come back where we were like, what the heck are they thinking? Why did they pick those comps? I can't explain. But if it's a VA loan, at least you have a reconsideration of value. So that's a benefit for listing agents, I think, in accepting VA loans. But again, that's Megan's opinion. So I'm going to go through now and I'm going to look at each one. So I'm going to click on this home and I am going to read all the features, right? So I'm going to read that this one as a new roof, 2023. I'm making note of that. Okay. So this one has a new roof. Do I get a ton of value for a new roof? No, but it's marketability, right? A 2-year-old roof versus a 20-year-old roof, big difference. So I'm taking notes of these things. It doesn't really come check out reasons, schedule your show. Entire interior's been fresh painted. new LVP flooring, upgraded kitchen, including cabinets and countertops, new dishwasher and upgraded bathrooms, and $5,000 in seller's concessions. It's a lot of upgrades, right? So based on that, maybe it's close to my square footage, but are my conditions super close? No, I don't have really updated anything in mind. But I'm going to make note of that, right? So I'm saying updated countertops, updated this. I'm going to make notes because when we get to the adjustment screen, we're going to adjust for all those things, okay? So you want to make notes on each one. And for the record, concessions, seller concessions does not mean commissions. Okay, everybody keeps saying, well, it's marked no or yes. That doesn't mean commission, it means concessions. So that can be towards closing costs, which may be your commissions at closing costs, but that does not mean commissions. We cannot say anything about commissions in the MLS. So just be prepared for that, because seasoned agents have been saying, well, it says no on there, so you're not paying commission. No, it says no seller concessions. So it's different. Okay, so anyway, so I'm going to go through and make a list. So this house, I'm going to say, all right, it has upgraded this, upgraded that, da 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 da. I'm keeping track of that. Then I'm going to go through and look at the photos. So I'm going to scroll through. Okay, there's no fence, so I'm making note of that. Okay, no fence, because I have a fence. So we need to know the differences between mine and theirs when we get to the adjustment screen. So we're going to write down no fence. And then they have, I guess, a small shed. So I'm going to write small shed, right? Okay, now here's your upgraded cabinets. Here's your stainless steel. We wrote this all down. So we're writing notes, LVP, fresh new vanity. Anything that you see that I know just based on what I've looked at mine is different, I'm making note of, okay? So I'm looking, has a 1-car garage, mine does, everything looks pretty, okay, I've been through it. So this one's listed at 230, I'm gonna make note of that, and this one is active. So now the next one, we are gonna go to Raymond Street, we're gonna look at this one. So this one again is saying new roof and AC within 3-year time frame. Making note of that, right? Because nothing in my house has been updated. So I'm going to use that as kind of like, how am I going to, position that? Then I'm going to look at the photos. Again, so this one has a 2-car garage. That's going to come up. It has a covered front porch. I'm making note of that. Covered front porch. We get value for that. Mine doesn't. So I need to make the difference. Covered front porch. I'm going to go through and look at the features. Okay, laminate flooring, I kind of have that. They have white appliances, same countertops. Like, we're pretty, equal on everything else. But they do have updated vanities. So I noticed that's an updated vanity. So I'm making note of anything that could be different from what I'm assuming in mine. Okay, this one has a bonus room. That's going to be reflected in our square footage. They have a screen porch and they have a deck. I have to make note of that. I'm making adjustments on that. And then they have, it appears as a vinyl fence. So I'm going to do vinyl fencing and wood fence. So they have partial fencing on the yard. All notes need to be taken because I have to go and make it like mine. So I've got to remove and add things. And so I'm going to go through. This one's also active and it's listed at 255. It is bigger, but that's a kind of a big jump for what we're seeing. And then we have our next one that was sold. So I'm going to look that it listed and sold at the same price. So it didn't go above, it didn't have a reduction. Again, I'm going to read all the features because this is what the appraiser is going to use. So this one doesn't say that anything is new. So I'm cool, nothing there noted. I'm going to go up and do the same thing with the photos. So you've got to take your time to go through. Covered front porch, we don't have that, right? They have laminate flooring. If I didn't have that, I'm going to make note. Kitchen's been updated. I'm going to go through, look at the bath. Same vanity as mine, same sink. I'm looking at anything that stands out different. Doesn't appear to have a fence. I don't see any fence in the notes. So I'm making note of that, okay? So we've gone through and done all that. So we want to make sure we have all of our differences. Now, I'm going to back up for a second. That's if we're in our neighborhood. So we saw how easy that was, right? We have plenty to look at in our neighborhood. Let's say we didn't have anything in our neighborhood, right? And you don't know the area, you don't know anything. So you don't know what neighborhoods are around there to look at. You can do multiple things. So let's say your neighborhood doesn't result in very much. Then you want to start, remember, small circle. So then we're going to start with our elementary school instead. So if we couldn't find anything by, the neighborhood, or we don't have enough comps, we could maybe add the elementary school. So when I add the elementary school, it might be, I don't know what they are. I think they're probably Spurlock out there, but I'm going to put Scurlock. Now I'm going to do more detailed information though, because as you can see, there's 154. Obviously, that's way too much to go through. So I'm going to do my total bedrooms. So I have 3. So I'm going to put 3 to 4. If you don't put a range, you just put 3, you're only going to get 3. And maybe we just want 3. We don't want maybe a bonus room. So we just put 3. And you have 2 full baths. You can either put 2 plus, 2 plus, 2 or more, 2 minus, 2 to 3. But if you just put 2, you're only getting 2. Then we're going to come down to our square foot range. We might do 1 up and 1 down, right? So if I'm 1,300 square feet, I might go up 1 and down 1 just to give a close range to my square footage, and I'm within the 10%. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna hit okay. I'm also gonna do the livable square footage. So if you don't know how to add it on your search screen, on your homepage of MLS, you're just gonna click add or remove, and then add the livable square footage. And we're gonna come in and wherever, I should already have it on here somewhere. There it is. Then I'm gonna put the range of square footage I want. So if I want 1,250 to 1,400. This is because, remember, if it's a triangle listing, they go by livable square footage, not closed square footage. So you're going to have to add that to your home screen. Okay. So once we do that, I'm going to say, okay, cool. Now I'm down to 6. So obviously I narrowed it down a lot. So I'm going to look at results. I could put, no new construction. I could put, different things like that. You can, change this so I can see the one. So you can see now I have different ones on here. So now I'm going to go through and do the same thing with this one. I'm going to add the livable square footage, and I'm going to kind of compare features to features and do the same thing. Generally looking, you're seeing the same kind of range, 239. This one's a little lower, 221, 233, 243, 249. So we're not really too far off what we've seen. We've seen 225 to 235 basically. But we're going to go through then and dig into these and see, and we can add our neighborhood to this or whatever, but we can dig in and now find others outside of that area. Is that tracking? Okay. You also have another opportunity. So let's take off the school. Say you don't know anything and you're just like, I don't remember how to look up a school. I don't remember anything, right? I can put in the features that I'm looking for. Okay. Active, pending, sold, bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, and I could hit map. So when you click map, you can then put in your address. 225 Northwoods Drive, Rayburn. And it's going to give you the map version. So then I can scroll out and then it will show me pendings, solds that are in the general area. I can even use a pen and do up to 3 miles. 3 miles is generally the max. So I could take the little pen and draw a circle for 3 miles. But again, if I'm in Hope County and I go 3 miles into Cumberland County, that's not applicable. We don't want to leave the county. If you have, the more unique the property. So if I have a let's say I have a triplex or I have a tri-level or I have, let's say a townhome. People get down townhomes a lot. You could probably go through your whole county and look at the whole county because townhomes are a limited product, right? Then you're going to have to compare HOAs. You're going to have to compare things to make them like. If you have an HOA that has pool and a clubhouse and and then you just have some townhome sitting off of, Ramsey Street somewhere with no amenities, we got to make adjustments for that. But the more unique the property, the rules break. So just remember that. If you have a log cabin, you might have to go 2 counties. So the more unique the property, the wider it goes. The smaller the uniqueness, you don't go picking comps to get a higher price. If you are a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Northwoods, there ain't no reason you're going to Westgate to get comps to raise the price because Westgate and Northwoods are not the same product. They're not in the same school zone. One has an HOA and a pool and yours does not. So you don't want to cherry pick. You want the homes most like yours, closest to yours. Okay. So we've made all of our notes. We've done all that. I'm going to go back to Northwoods and put in our original. Let's say you forget your search that you have. You could just come up here to recent searches and hop back down and go right back to where you were. Okay. So if you've never used your recent searches thing, it could save you a lot of time. You could just pop back in there and go back and forth. So let's say now we found our comp. So I'm going to take these two that are closed, and these are the ones that I want to look at. So I'm going to select those two. Okay, so I'm selecting the comps that I've kind of read through. I think they're the best ones for me, and I'm doing those two. Now, if you want to add a pending one, you can, but that's not what I'm going to weigh the weight on to price. But if I see the trend is changing, I might include one of the pendings because it might affect my pricing. So then I'm going to go to CMA. So I'll just show you these real quick. The 3 up literally just puts them on a grid. Okay, there's no adjustments. It's just giving descriptions. This is not how you price the house. Okay, this is like an informational sheet. If you wanted to maybe send somebody a market update, like any past clients, anybody you know who owns a home should be getting a market update from you regularly. You can also do market updates on social media for the neighborhood. You could pull things like this, and that would give you the data needed for that. If you go to the quick CMA, this one is, again, it's not doing adjustments. Okay, it's breaking it down. This is another great report. I send this a lot of times to past clients, showing what's going on with their neighborhood and stuff. This is just breaking down the activity. It's lining it up in a very clean, pretty project little thing. It tells you low, medium, average, median. So you can see the pricing along here. The max is 240, average is 232, and the low is 225 basically. So this is just an overview. Again, no adjustments, but this is a great tool for y'all to use to anybody you know who owns a home. Give them a market update so they know what's going on in their neighborhood. Call it a glimpse, whatever. Don't call it a CMA. You can use the stats on social. Like, it's a great quick report. But if I want to do, and this may even help you for the buyer side, you might do a quick one just to kind of see what is trending. But the one I want to use is the CMA. So where it says CMA, that's the one I want to use. We do have a cloud CMA option that's more than likely going away this year. So I wouldn't really focus on that. So I'm going to click CMA. So screen 1, start. I can either create a contact and put that seller in here with their name, their email, and all that stuff. Okay. They're not going to get anything from you unless you send it to them. So it doesn't hurt to put them in there. Let's say you don't want to do that. You could come down to where it says description and just put Northwoods. Okay. We can come back and find it under the name Northwoods. Pages. Let me clear this really quick. So when you first come in here, it's going to look like this. Okay. So you have this little graph thing on this side, and then a blank page on this side, and across the top of the bar are all blanks. Okay, you see how it's not gray anywhere? So we have to select the pages that we want to include in our CMA. So starting with custom pages, what does that mean? Custom pages are pages you want to upload. So you might click manage custom pages, and you can upload your own document, or keep the ones that you've had on file. What would you put here? Well, you could put maybe your reviews because you want to include it in your CMA, and maybe you don't have a listing presentation yet, so you want to include it in there. Maybe some of the stats, when I go show you how to pull stats, like days on market, stuff like that, you might want to add those stat pages into the CMA. You can upload them into here. You can put anything you want in here. If you want to put your face in there, you can put whatever you want there. So you can add custom pages, okay? Now, your cover sheet, I'm going to add everything. So if you click on the title, it's going to add them all. Cover sheet, it's going to give you 3 different options. Cover sheet with agent photo, cover sheet with no subject photo. If you don't want to add them all, you hit the plus sign and you can choose which one you want. Okay. Subjects and adjustments, you hit the plus sign. It's going to give you all your options. Price adjustments has 3 on a page. This one has 4 on a page. I'm going to put them all just to show you what a full report looks like. You are obviously not going to take 55 pages to your appointment, because they will fall asleep on you and probably lose interest very quickly. So, but I want you to see all the options that you have. Comparable, so if you hit the plus sign, it's going to give you all these different statistics reports. What's your pricing recommendation, the charts, because you might have a visual person. So sometimes it is good to have some visual in there, because if you haven't read the personality type by the phone, you don't know if there are numbers, if they're visual. You don't know if you got to pay attention to the questions you ask and read that personality, because, you know, if they just want quick facts, you don't want to send 3 reports, right? They just want the numbers. But if they're a person who needs all the data, some of these reports might be. And I've even so much as to said on my pre-list interview, Are you somebody who likes graphics, words, numbers, and do you want direct to the point, or do you want me to educate you on the process? Because we're assuming, just like when you have a client, you should say, how do you prefer to communicate? I shouldn't assume you want to text me, because you might hate texting and I can lose you because all I do is text. So like, ask those questions, what do you like? Because that way you can kind of tailor it to that. And then they have the static reports. So these are all really cool things that you could plug in that might be helpful in explaining. So my pre-list interview, right? If I say, what do you think your home is worth by chance? Oh, 400,000. And I'm pulling comps for 250. I'm going to print all the things that say why we don't overprice, right? I'm going to nail it in during that appointment before we get to pricing. So I'm just going to click all of these so you can see the different options. And then map. So you may add the map feature, especially if you're picking comps outside of the area, so they can see where the comps are coming from. Now, once you have yours set up the way you want it, you can hit set as default, and those will come up every time. So like if I say restore default, it's going to go back to the ones I like. Now, this is how it's always set up, but I'll add more based on my conversations, but this is my basic setup. So you can always save it to always come back to your basic, or you can just start over every single time, however you want to do it. Okay. If you want to delete something, you could just click on it and hit the delete button. If you want to change the order, you can click on it and do the arrows up and down. Okay. So you could put it in the order that you want. So now I'm going to go to my subject screen. So we have to enter the subject data into, because we have to do the adjustments, right? So you have multiple options. One, I can do it from manually. So manually means I'm going to enter in all the information myself. How many bedrooms, how many baths, the whole deal. If you have an old MLS number, right? So we pulled those old MLS numbers on the Realist. You can punch it in here and hit fill, and it's going to put all the data into it for you. Bedrooms, bathroom, garage, price per square foot, all of that for you. Or you could go back and try to find the listing in the MLS and fill it from there. Okay, so I'm just going to do manually. This is the screen. Now, if you put an old MLS number in, it's the same screen, it's just filled out for you. Okay, so you wouldn't have to do anything pretty much on this part. So we would put your property address, and we're going to put our features, right? So if I had 3 bedrooms total, I'm just going to leave this blank for demonstration later, but so we would put our bathrooms, your half baths, your garage spaces. You want to definitely put your sold square footage. Okay, so that's going to be maybe from Realist right now. You can put your lot size acres. You don't necessarily have to go through and do all this stuff. You might want to put your year built. I don't remember what mine is, so we're just going to make it up. We're going to put your year built, and make sure that, because we might have to take a little bit of adjustment if one's newer or older. All the other fields you can fill out if you want, like more specifically lot numbers and stuff, but it's not necessary, but you can. So this is where we're putting in all those adjustments that we have to talk about now, right? So somebody had a screen porch, somebody had a covered front porch, we had upgrades. So that's under custom fields. So I'm going to click on this tab, and it will let you choose from up here, or you can put your own. So we're going to say screen porch because one of the comps had it, right? But we don't. So if we do not have it, we're putting 0. We don't have one, right? Somebody else does. We do not. So we're putting 0. Then we had a covered front porch. So we're going to put covered front porch. If I'm not spelling right, I cannot see. I'm like winging it. We have 0. We don't have I think we do, but we're just going to say 0. 0, we don't have a covered front porch. One of the houses had upgrades, right? So we're going to say, maybe you could do this multiple ways. We can do it all by, cabinets, kitchen, whatever, or we could just do a condition adjustment. So that one had all new cabinets, paint, floor. So we could just say condition. You can definitely break it down if you want to. It's however you want. My recommendation to y'all is when you have appraisers start giving you the appraisal reports, start saving them, make a spreadsheet, put Hope County, neighborhood, and then what they gave adjustments for and the value. If you get about 20 of those going, even in your office, just go back to your office and send out an email and say, can everybody share some of their values from their appraisals? And you could start getting kind of like a, hate to say it, but a cheat sheet. Now you don't want to live and die by the cheat sheet, because the appraisers will tell you that there's no set value for anything. It's based on what's sold, what the difference was. That's how they give the value. But it would give you a general idea for certain price points and areas and things of that nature. So I'm going to say condition, and I'm going to say I don't have an updated bathroom. I don't have I don't have any of that. So I'm going to hit 0 again. Maybe I have an updated bathroom, but I don't have an updated kitchen or anything else. So I might say a 1. Okay. And the other person's going to be higher. Now we also have new roof and new HVAC. So I might say new roof and HVAC. And I don't have those. Mine are 20 years old, so I'm going to say 0. Now maybe I have something that somebody doesn't have. So we're just going to make it up so that you can see the difference. So let's say I have, what do I have? Let's say I have a pool. Okay. I'm going to say I have 1, right? So it's all about what I have on this screen, right? Because all of the comparables have to adjust to become like me. I'm not adjusting to become like them. Okay. So I have a pool. I'm going to say 1. So I have a pool. Cool. So now you can go through and add as many things as you need to make the adjustments. Now, again, don't say Megan said, but you might choose. I personally don't choose to do the little nickel and diming. Okay. Oh, we have ceiling fans. They don't. Or we have, they're not, that's, you're getting I stick to the big things: square footage, garage, bathrooms, big upgrades, because, if we looked, all the houses had laminate floors. So I'm not putting laminate floors because we are all equal. The problem is you walk into your listing appointment and they say, well, I just did all new floors and I did all new paint. Well, so did all the comps. So you are just making yourself equal to what is already sold. We only give value for what is above, and we take away for what's below. If you've made yourself like everybody else, I'm sorry, you're just late on the train. You just caught up to everybody. Okay. So that's where, you got to be able to because they think because they just went and dropped 10 grand to get the house ready. Well, you just got it market ready compared to everybody else. So I don't go through and be like, oh, they have tile backsplash in 1 bathroom, so that's $500. Like, that gets very hard to justify, especially if you get Tidewater or you don't get value. They're not going to adjust it for a $500 tile backsplash, in my opinion. Don't say Megan said. So we're going to fill all this out. Great. Now you have your cover sheet. You want to make sure all your information is correct. You could put the contacts information here, their address, all that wonderful stuff. These are our comparables. Well, we only have 2. So if we want to go back and add another one, right? Because how many do we ideally want? 3. I mean, that's what they're going to use. You could do up to 5. But they're going to take their top 3. But sometimes on your appraisals, you'll see there's 5 comps. They're trying to show and prove a market trend. So you can go up to 5, but they're going to take the top 3 best into consideration before they go to 5. So you could click add from listings and go back, right? So I can go back in, and now I could take this off and do my elementary school search and then add from here to get that 3rd one. So I can take this off. I can go into, elementary school. Let's say Spurlock. I don't think it's Spurlock. Maybe they're Upchurch. Maybe it doesn't matter. That's middle school. Yeah, we're in elementary school. So I'll just, doesn't matter. We're just going to take a comp. Okay. So you'll see, there's way too many. Okay. Well, we would go back through and we would say 3 bedrooms. We would say 2 baths, and we would do our square foot range. Never felt so old until I'm in here doing it. And then we're going to go out, and then we're going to do our livable square footage. 1250 to 1450. And we have 9. Okay. So now we're going to go and we're going to pick one. So we would go through our process, right? Read the description, look at the pictures. Which one is most like ours now that we left the neighborhood? So remember, as soon as you leave the neighborhood, it needs to be as close as possible to yours. Now, some people will get caught up in like, well, this one has siding, this has brick. If everything else is the same, that's a great comp. We'll just take an adjustment for the brick. They do not have to be identical. So let me clarify. The comps don't have to be identical, but they have to be most like. If one's a flip and yours is not, the flip is going to be least like yours, right? But if you can't find any other comps, then we're going to use the flip and just take a really big adjustment because we don't want to go 5 miles. We'd rather stay within a mile and a similar property and just take the adjustment. So we're just going to pick this one. Okay. So I'm going to add selected. We're going to pretend we did all of our due diligence. Okay. So we added that one. So now we have the 3 here. Okay. We feel happy about that. So we're going to go to this adjustments tab. This is where we're going to do the math, right? We're going to make these all like me and like you and whatever. So when I get to this screen, bedrooms, now again, don't say Megan said, I don't adjust for bedrooms. And if you watch the appraiser videos, they do reference not always adjusting for bedrooms because that's reflected in the square footage. The times that you would adjust for bedrooms, if I was maybe a 2-bedroom house and we're going to a 4-bedroom house, the use would be different, right? 2-bedroom is probably not a big family or not a lot of people, where a 4-bedroom is a whole different dynamic. Or, you know, those kind of extremes is where you might do a bedroom. Typically, if it's a 3 and there's a 4, we're not doing adjustment for that because it's usually reflected in the square footage. So that would be like double dipping. Oh, let me give an adjustment for a bedroom. Oh, and the square footage, you're double dipping. So we don't always do that. It's usually when there's a similar square footage, but you have, maybe they're both 2,000 square feet, but one has 6 bedrooms, one has 4. We might take a bedroom adjustment because the use could be different. So, you know, again, go watch the videos. Don't say Megan said. So now I go to put it, so I don't do any adjustments, right? Because we're the same. So then I go to do my bath adjustment. And let's say I'm giving a value of $5,000. I'm not telling you that's what a full bath is. You'll figure those out. I hate to say that, it's the worst part everybody wants to know. Follow and track your appraisals. Go to your offices, ask people to share what they use, create your own maybe cheat sheet. You can honestly even call appraisers. They're not scary. They will help you. I call them probably once a week. If I'm getting prepared for a listing and I'm stumped, I call them and say, hey, would you consider this or that? Like, they're not scary. So you could do that. And again, what they're going to tell you is look at the prices of the homes that have closed and what is different about them. Break up the adjustments based on that. I don't know how to figure that out to this day. So I'm just gonna be honest. So if you can figure that out, you should teach that because it's probably the key to all things. But so in general, I'm just gonna say $5,000, right? Well, there's nothing being done. Okay. Why is there no adjustments being done? Well, they're all the same, but what else is different on this line versus this line?
No data.
It says no data. So what does that mean? Right, I have no information. So how can we adjust if we have no information, right? So I'm going to go back to my subject and I'm going to look and say, oh, crap, I didn't put in bathrooms. Okay. I'm going to make a fake number here for demonstration purposes. So we're going to say that my house has 3 full bathrooms. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go to my adjustments and I put my 5,000 in, and now they had to add to those comparables to make it like mine. Right? Because they had 2, I had 3, they want to be just like me. So they add another bathroom to be just like me. Okay. Now I get to half baths. Again, what is the problem? No data. No data means what? Go back to your subject. Got to put in data. Again, I'm just going to lie. So we're going to say we have 1. And we're going to go back to adjustments. It takes, I put a value in. If my full bath was 5, let's just pretend it's 2,500. I'm not saying that's what the value is. They'll take an adjustment, right? They have to add to it to make it like mine. So anytime you see no data, you need data, and that's from the subject tab. You're putting what you think that value is for that one item at the top, and it will do the math for you. Now you can take, it doesn't give you an adjustment for basement or crawl space or slab. There is right now adjustments being done, crawl space versus slab. I don't typically take it, to be honest, but if you look at your appraisal reports, you'll see there is a couple $1,000 difference between the two. Again, that's up to you if you want to take that adjustment or not. I typically don't. Like I said, I stick to kind of some core things. Talk to your broker in charge, ask their opinion, but I typically just let that be a wash. Now our garage spaces, again, values will always change based on features. Like let's say you're in gates 4 and they're all brick and they have all this fancy stuff. That garage is probably gonna be of a higher value than my little Northwoods house with vinyl siding and like no extra features at all. So I'm just gonna say $5,000. Again, I'm not telling you that's what the value is. Don't say Megan said a garage is 5,000. So I'm gonna put 5,000. Now you can see I have one, so the first one has one, so that's a 0, right? Because we're equal. Now these were 2-car garages, so they have to take away from it to make it like mine. It doesn't mean that these are not perfect comps. So remember, because I'm a 1-car and they're a 2-car, don't get so caught up in it has to have every feature the same. We want most like ours. So don't, get caught up in that. So nobody has carport spaces, so it doesn't matter that we have no data because we don't need to adjust for it unless we have one. If we have one and none of them do, then we need to go make an adjustment. So let's just say that we do, because they don't have any listed, right? So I'm going to go back to my subject and I'm going to say that we have a carport space. Okay, so we have carport. I'm going to go back to my adjustments. And I give that value $1,250. I don't know. They don't have anything marked. So what do I need to do for this adjustment? First, what do I need to verify?
Do they have them?
Do they have it or not? Because it's not on here and I just reviewed these things an hour ago. I don't remember. I'm going to go back up here to my comparables and I'm going to click back and go look through and make sure they don't. Now they all don't have one. So what do I have to do?
And
Add $1,250 to each one, right? Because they don't have any and they have to be me. So to be me, they have to have a carport spot. So I'm going to add $1,250 to each one manually. So sometimes you might have to do manual adjustments. Again, if you look over here, you can see the price changing, right? So this is what they started at. Making them like me, this is where we're ending up at. Does that make sense? So that's what we're pricing off of, is how we're making them like us, not where we started from. Now, the unfortunate thing, well, we'll get there in a second before I tell you that. So this again says no data for age. So we could put the age in here if we wanted to make adjustments. Again, it's gonna, this gets put in wrong. This is the age of the home once it closes and people get a little confused by that. So we're gonna skip over that one. But when you close it out in MLS and it says age of home when it's sold, that's not like the year it was built. It was like, it's how old was it when it closed? 30 years old, 40 years old, whatever. So now we get to sold square footage. So fortunately for us, I guess I should have found an example that wasn't. These are all Fayetteville MLS listings. Okay, so the closed square footage is all there. So since they're all there from the Fayetteville square footage MLS, this is going to be easy, but I'll tell you what we do when we don't have one. So we're going to go back to this, we're going to jump to this pricing tab. Okay, so I'm going to go to pricing and you're going to see your average price per square foot. Okay, so there's your square foot, here's your average, and it is $189. Okay, so that's our average price per square foot. On a CMA, we're only taking 50% of it. Why do we only take 50%? Because we are only comparing wall space to wall space. Okay, that 189 includes your bathroom fixtures, your countertops, your lot value. It includes everything that makes up your house. That's not what we're comparing. We're comparing your square footage. So the space from wall to wall, that's all we're looking at. We're not looking at features. We're not looking at any of that. So we take 50% of that. So if you watch the appraisal panel videos, they explain it maybe better than me, but they go through why they take an average of 50%. So we're going to come over to adjustments. And we're going to put in, I don't know what the math is. We're just going to say 90. We're going to pretend that was half. Again, there's no data, right? So I have to do what? Go back to the subject. I'm going to put maybe the square footage from the old MLS or Realist or something until I can go out and measure. Okay. So again, this is an estimate based on that. So it does the math for me, right? So it had to add to all of these because these were smaller than me and I am bigger. Okay. Now lot size acres. Where can we get the lot size acres for this lot? Realist, where else? Tax, where else? your plat, RPR, yeah. So we would go back and put that in. Now, if these are all from the same neighborhood, they're not gonna take an adjustment. Even though you see that one is an acre and one's half an acre, not taking an adjustment most of the time. The reason being is the lot use is the same. You know, it's fenced, you're gonna have a dog, maybe a kid, something. It's not 5 acres where you're in a horse, it's lot use is the same, so they're not gonna take an adjustment. Now, is there marketability in that? Sure, 1 acre lot for you in Hope County, low taxes, da 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 da. Sure, marketability. But the appraiser's not pricing it based on that. So there's marketability and then there's pricing, right? So something that you may not get value for, but you can market does have value. You know, if you're comparing against your competition. So like up against 3 active listings that only have half an acre lot, I could say the only house on the market in this neighborhood with an acre plus lot, you know, like you can make it sound wonderful and that can draw attention, but you're not necessarily going to convert that to value. So, and then again, this is where the year built is. So they will say typically $300 to $500 a year adjustment for every year over 3 years. However, you have to be careful with that because this one says 2015, right? And this one's 2003. If this one was a flip or I'm a flip, I'm pretty equal to a 2015. So you don't just come in and do an age adjustment just because the age is different. You have to look at quality and like, what are you comparing against? So if this one is 2015, but I have all these updates and did new vinyl and new, you know, I'm not taking adjustment for age because we're very similar at that point. Now, if my home is literally 1998 and I've made no adjustments, then yes, I need to make an age adjustment because not only my condition, but my age, everything's going to become a factor to that. So then we keep scrolling and now here's the ones that we put in. Okay, so we're going to give a screen porch. Again, I'm not telling you values. Okay, I'm just throwing out numbers. So we're going to give our screen porch $2,500. Okay, nothing's been done, right? So now we have to put, you see that there's 2 rows. Okay, so I have to add which house has it and which one doesn't. Now, you took notes, so I'm old school. I'm sure some of you more techie people have an iPad, you write all your notes and like, great. I print out all the cut sheets and I like trash all my notes on it like ridiculously. Or I have a notebook and I'll put this property address, all the notes. So I'm going to go back through and figure out which ones had the screen porch. So if this one had the screen porch, I'm going to put a 1. If this one does not, I'm going to put a 0. Oh wait, I'm in the wrong one. Y'all got to correct me. Don't be afraid to correct me. I'm going to put a 1 here. I'm going to put a 0 here. And maybe this one has 1. Then you'll see it does the math for me still. So there's 2 columns on those fields because one is to enter your how many you have or don't have. And then it's going to do the adjustment for you. And then your covered front porch. So if your covered front porch, let's say we're giving that 1,500. Again, I'm not telling you set values. So don't hold me to that. I'm going to say 1,500. You see it's not doing the adjustment, right? So in order to get the adjustment done, I need to put which one has it and which one doesn't. So if this one has it, I'm going to put a 1, and this one has it, I'm going to put a 1, and if this one has it, I'm going to put a 1. So you can see it's doing the adjustments. So that's why you want to put all of your features that you can up here. You're going to put, remember we numbered ours. Did we have 1? Did we have 0? Did we have none? And then you're going to put your value in and it's going to make the adjustments for you. Does that all make sense? Okay, our condition adjustment. This might be where, you know, these houses are flips or maybe just better than ours. I do give a condition adjustment. You know, you might not put that in there before you go to the house because you don't know if the house is great or not great. Because people will tell you the house is great and you walk in like, oh, heck. Or they say, oh, I'm so scared for you to see my house, and you think it's going to be a train wreck and you walk in and it's beautiful. So you may not put that in right up front. And again, your goal is to create a range, right? And your range, you really want within $10,000 to $15,000. If your range is higher than $10,000 to $15,000, you have bad comps. We should not be $20,000, $30,000 apart from one comp to another. It's too far. We're doing something wrong. We're picking the wrong comps. It should be pretty dang tight. I mean, I'd say $10,000. You would have a low, a median, and a high that you could market and really justify that price. If you're more than that, you're pulling comps that don't make sense. Appraisers also like to see where you've added to some comps and taken away from some comps, right? I don't want all giant comps that I've had to reduce down or all teeny tiny comps that I've had to give value up. They want to see some with taken away and some added. So we want to have a diversity of, comps. So then we have your new roof. If you want to add it there, again, you're going to put your values in the top. And then if this one has it or don't have it, and that's going to take the adjustment. So let's say like I have a pool, right? And we're going to give the pool 7,000. Nobody else has a pool. So I'm going to put 0, 0, 0. It is now done the math and the adjustments. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is probably the biggest part. When you're going through your comps, pick the features they have you don't have, add all those fields, and then make the adjustment. So now you can see your numbers again. This is where we started. This is where we're ending. They're pretty much within $10,000, so these are good comps. Okay, I know I've played with the numbers, but it's generally good comps if we're within $10,000. If you're seeing 15, 20, 30, or something's wrong, we need to go back and look, right? And don't be afraid in your offices and stuff to ask people to look. I mean, you can even email me. Hey, I'm doing a CMA. I'm struggling. Does this look right? Because, and I never tell people, if anybody ever asks me, I always say, don't tell me the value you got. Just give me the address. Let me do my due diligence and see what I come up with. If we're within 5 to 10,000, I think we're good, but let's talk about it. And then again, pricing and positioning. So we have here, this is your adjusted prices. Okay. So this is talking about your pricing. Here's your adjusted price, low, median, average, and high. Okay. So let's talk about that. When I show up to who sets the price for a listing? The seller. We don't tell them what price. We take them the information. They choose. So now I have a range for them, right? If I am like pushing, like I think this house is phenomenal, I'm going to go over my pricing last. And I'm going to go through this other stuff first, which I'll show you. And I hopefully have pushed them to the pricing that I think, should be at. If the house is bad, let's say it just doesn't show well, right? And I'm concerned about that. I'm going to push them probably closer to the lower end. These other houses have this, they have that. You want to show them pictures, bring your computers to walk through. And if these people are delusional that their house is fantastic, okay, and maybe it's not, maybe the paint's outdated, the carpet's bad, they've not painted the cap, everything is bad. Pull up the comparables, show them the photos. This house sold for this, and you want to be here, but we're not comparable. You can't be afraid to be honest. Obviously, you want to be tactful, but you can't be afraid to be honest about it. So once we put this all in here, you can write your notes here. So I would do a range. I would never put a price. You would put your notes here. Maybe like comp 1 was a flip. Comp 2 has a pool, like some little notes for you to remember to point out. And then when you hit finish, this is obviously, we're never going to send them 60 pages. Okay. So just remember, I just want to show you all the things that are available to you. So it'll just take a minute to download it. And then after we go through this, I'm going to show you some of the stats reports to show how to pull your average days on market, the absorption rate, things like that you can add to your listing presentations. And also you can use for social media. So as you guys are trying to get leads and get business organically, social media, people, no offense, I know I'm being recorded, they probably don't care so much that you keep posting you sold a house. What is the value to me as a consumer that you sold a house? I mean, it's good once in a while. I know you're doing business, right? It validates you. But if you're not giving me great information, like, hey, do you know with the VA loan, you still have to pay closing costs? Educate them. Do you know how many people think that because they're a VA loan, they don't have closing costs? Educate. That's a great video. Or, hey, do you know that no loan requires a home inspection? How many people think that a VA loan requires a home inspection? No loan requires a home inspection. Do educational things. When you pull comps like this and you can show people, hey, the average market time is now 4 months. COVID is gone. Educate them, because some people still think they're going to list and sell in a day with 20 people lined up outside. And when they get a first showing 5 days later, they're so disappointed, even though you told them. So think education, and you can use a lot of that for this. So anyways, this is the activity versus timing report. So this will show them that like your first 2 weeks is your most market time. This is a great data for just posting on social as well. Like, hey, those sellers that tell you, let's price high and see what happens, right? Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I appreciate that strategy. However, our first 2 weeks market time is our most exposure. If an agent or a client thinks you're overpriced, they're probably going to pass your house up and look at the house down the street. So make sure you're educating them. We don't want to waste that market time. And usually if you overprice, it will cause more reductions in the long run statistically to sell your house. So there's a graph that will talk about that too. Then you have, we have what you want and we have what the buyer wants. How do we get to the middle, right? Buyer wants the lowest deal. You want the highest. We want to get in the middle. It's a great graphic. This is now your breakdown to go over pricing with them. This is where you could talk about the adjustments you made, why you made it. This is also called the grid that you can use when you have Tidewater. You can use this for that. So it breaks down your deductions down here. It lists all the things you took adjustments for. So you could clearly tell them, hey, this house has a screen porch. You don't. This house has a pool. You don't. This house had a new HVAC and roof. This helps you as you're going through your appointment, remembering, explaining to them how you got to the value you got to. This is your pricing recommendation page of what you would recommend. Now, remember how you could add your custom fields? So this might be where I added their net sheet in here. So this isn't the same property, but this is one of the ones I had on file. This is where you could go through and show them all their fees, right? So you can give them, you don't need their loan payoff to do it, but you can show them, the attorney fees, if they agree to commissions, what that would look like, prorated taxes. So remember, when a seller closes, they have to pay the buyer back for the months that they lived in the house. Because when the buyer gets the tax bill in November, they only closed in June. They shouldn't have to pay for January through June. So that's where on Realist, you go look at your tax bill, divide it by 12. If we're closing in July, I'm going to take that times 7, and that's the credit I'm giving to the buyer. You have revenue stamps and anything else you might put in here. Again, this is a stat. I'll show you how to pull that. I might have put a one-liner to show them a whole picture of the neighborhood next to them, their neighborhood, just a quick breakdown. You can add that as a custom page. Then this is the cover pages. So again, you could choose which cover page you like. There's different cover pages. If you don't have a subject photo, you could literally go to Google Earth and just Google snippet, or go to Zillow or whatever. These are some, again, lines up. That was the price up adjustments where there's only 3 a page, but I like the 4 one because they're all on one page. I don't have to go through 2 pages. This is a breakdown of the stats. So again, if they need visuals, this is how many days on market for the comparables. And this is typically what I will do too. If I have this report in here, I'm going to go write notes next to each one. Why did this one take 55 days? I'm going to go look at the history. Maybe it had 3 price drops. Maybe, I'm going to write notes of why that one took longer. If the other ones that sold quickly were flips or had new paint or a new roof, I'm going to write note. So I'm going to say, see this house overpriced? They did 3 price drops. They were on the market 50 days. These 2 houses priced great, and they sold in 5 days or less. So you have, different price graphs, list to sell ratio. I mean, there's all this data. That's what I'm saying. You're not going to take all this with you, but this is great stuff this is a guarantee to you. So you could be like, I'm your best agent, my guarantee to work for you. This is the effects of overpricing. So it's another great grid. The more you overprice, the longer it takes to sell, it goes through that. So that's another great graphic. Benefits of using a realtor. Maybe you're soliciting for sale by owners. This is a great handout to send with your marketing of why there's a benefit of using a realtor. So you have that. This goes over what a market analysis is. This again, if you go to market value, you're getting 60% of the buyers. If you are under market value, you're getting more buyers, so on, so on. You overprice 15%, you're only getting 10% of the buyers. So this is very good graphics if people are wanting to overprice. There's a value in being market value or below. Again, pitfalls of overpricing causes more price reductions, things of that nature. Where do buyers come from? Okay, so buyers come from the internet. So I'm glad you're using me. We're going to have great photos online. We're going to get professional photos. We're going to do a tour. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to capture those leads. Most people are using an agent. So that's why I'm always available. I have my phone on. I have a flyer in the yard so people can contact me. You're using this to sell your marketing. I'm going to have a yard sign. All the rest is small numbers, but I'm gonna sell why the benefit of me. It doesn't matter if you're from a small firm, big firm, if you're new, you're old, you can sell that. How to have a positive showing. It's great to put in there for prepping. Same with showing, stuff like that. So you can, all of this stuff you can break up and use or take away as you want. Sorry. I have ADD, I'll get distracted. I'll be like, what are they talking about? They ordering lunch? So this is all the stuff that you have that's available for you through that program. So that's what I think. You could cut it up, piece it up as you want. You don't have to like stay all those documents, okay? So now we're also going to go to the stat reports. How do I get out of the screen? What is the screen? Oh. Always have smarter people in the room than you. All right, so now, okay, so and what I was talking about the history, just in case, if I go to a listing, I'm gonna always click on the history during my little investigation too, and see how many times did it go pending, did it have any price drops, anything like that that can help me with positioning. So you're always gonna look at that too. So we're gonna show you some stats tabs. This is just additional kind of reinforcements that you can use for kind of educating the market. So if you click on this stats tab up here, it's going to take you to the screen. So you have presets, like this will show market trends over time. So this is really great for maybe you need to learn the market, you can use these, or if you need to educate a seller on that. So you might look at, you're distracting me, Nakia, all your chitter chatter out there.
What does it mean?
So you might look at like maybe historical count of active listings, right? So I could put that in and I could pick my subdivision. So I'm working in Northwoods right now. So I can go to Northwoods and go to Polk County, right? Oh, that's not what it was. Okay, and then I can just hit generate. So I'm keeping it simple, right? One neighborhood, I want to see the historic count of active listings. I'm going to hit generate. Okay, I can't read graph. So I'm going to hit data. Now it's showing you, over the years, 2020, what did it look like? November, December, things like that. I don't know why this does not look accurate because that is all zeros. So I don't know, that doesn't look good. But anyways, so typically it will give you how many over time. The benefit of that is you can show the trend as it changes month by month. So if you go to the customize tab, this is where you can do your own personal searches. So maybe I want year to date, okay? And I want to see how many days it sells on average, okay, for that neighborhood. So I'm gonna put days to sell average. You can also do advanced options and add more fields if you want. And then I'm going to group it by month and I'm going to hit generate. And it's going to tell you that in March, it took average 29 days for a house to sell in Northwoods. They may not have had any close in January, February, or April. I'd have to go back and look and see. But it will give you kind of an idea of the average days to sell on market, things like that. You can also go in here and choose. It has average price point. It has absorption rate, months of inventory, list price, close price to list price. So, during COVID, homes were selling over list. Now you can see it's selling at list price, and Northwoods is very much known for that. But you could put in different neighborhoods too. You could put it in by school district. You could put it in by county. So if you wanted to get more data, you can always come in here and do these customized tabs and pull that for your searches. Also, if you go back to your homepage, you have these fast stats and these info sparks. So if you click on those, they can give you additional data. So like here, you could choose by zip code or I'm just gonna do, let's do Hope County. So I could do Hope County and I can do for April of 2025 and hit view report. and it's gonna give you a nice little report on your sales, your average days on market, list to sell ratio, and this is for all of Hope County. So this is good data, again, that you can take to your listing presentation to show price changes from year to date, month to month, year over year. It goes over existing, new construction. So it kind of gives you more data that you can take in regards to that. Now you also have this InfoSparks, and this one you can get even more precise. So I can put in a price range. So if I'm listing between, $199 and $274, I can click that. I can click single family. I can click 3 bedrooms, how many bathrooms, year built, and put type, and it's going to give you all the data. How many new listings did you have? How many months supply? And it's going to give you all the charts and data for that specific search. So the 2 good things about that is, one, you're educating your buyer or your seller. Because if the buyer's like, why can't I get all my closing costs? And why can't you can explain to them, well, they're selling at full price, the market time's under 20 days. You can educate them on that. With the seller, you can set up realistic expectations. It's no longer COVID, it's taking 40 days to sell. We are seeing some concessions. So the more data you have, the more trust that you're creating with that client. It's also you're educating yourself, so you know what's going on in the market. So when people ask you, and this information is also good for you to use in your social media. So you can say, hey, our average days on market have gone from 2 to 40 or whatever it may be. Our average price point has stayed stable the last year. We've only gone up 3%, where during COVID we were going up almost 40%. So, you have all that data on these apps and these little tabs. So you can use InfoSparks, you can use FastSparks, and then you can use the Stats tab in your matrix to pull any kind of data that you want to pull.
Do the InfoSparks and Fast, do they pull data from the same source?
Yes, they're pulling data from the same source, but it's mostly from our Fayetteville MLS. So some of the Triangle data doesn't come in. So if they've closed out listings through the Triangle MLS, even though we've merged, some of that information will come in. It hasn't skewed the numbers too much, but it's definitely not pulling all of it that is closed out in the Triangle. So like if it's a Triangle listing in Hope County and they've closed it out, it doesn't show up in that InfoSpark. So they're trying to work on that, but that doesn't show up. And that's why when we're in our CMA program, you always want to do the livable square footage, because if you're just doing the closed, you're missing any of those Triangle ones. Now, after you've completed your CMAs and you're like, how do I get back to it? You go under My Matrix and you go to My CMAs. And then you'll see them all listed here. So if you go back into, you could go right back to your, I think we called it Northwoods. There we go. You can click on that and it's going to either let you can go back and edit it, you can view it, and you can delete it, or you can email it. So if I want to go back in and edit it, I can come right back in and jump and add and change, like, add a new comp maybe I found or anything else I wanted. Now, when we were on this screen and we were at this closed square footage, right? If it's a Triangle listing, it's not going to show the closed square footage. Okay. So this would be blank, this part right here. Well, if that is blank, we cannot go to pricing and get the average price per square foot, right? Because we're missing one. So now we're going to have to manually do it. We're going to take this property right here, and we're going to take the closed sales price, $224, and divide it by the 1230, whatever that says, and get the average square foot. Then we're going to take this one, 235 by 1225, get the average square foot. Then we're going to have to go and pull the livable square footage that closed out for the Triangle listing, divide it by that square footage, then add all 3 up, divide it by 3, get the average square footage, and then divide it in half. Does that make sense? No.
Makes sense, but I think I'm wrong.
Yeah, so hold on, let me go and add, let's just find a Triangle listing and I'll show you. Let's see if we have any in here that is a Triangle. No. All right, so let's go back and let's just do Hope County. And if y'all don't know all the little features in the MLS, we do have videos on the YouTube page, and we do an MLS class like every month. good lord.
So how do you know if it's triangle?
It will say TR in front of, is there really not a single one? That literally never happens. Hold on, let me eliminate. Let me get rid of everything. And let me just do closed. And let's do home level. Let's try to find. Okay, see how it says TR?
Okay.
Okay, so that's a triangle one. So I don't know if this is relevant or not. I'm just adding it so we can demonstrate this. All right, so when we go to our adjustments, see how this one is now blank? Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take Northwood, so I'm gonna take 224.9, divide it by that 1235. So if somebody's doing that. And what do we get? Who has calculator? Come on, this is active participation. If I gotta look at the screen far away, somebody's doing math. So we're taking the 224.9, I think that is, divided by, is that 1225? 1235.
182.10.
Okay, so we're gonna write that down. 182.10. Now we're gonna take this one, the 235 by 12, whatever that is. Yes. Can't see. So divide that, what do we get? I know everybody's participating, because y'all are gonna leave here and be like, what the hell is she saying? Okay, so what do we get? 191, what? Okay, now we're gonna take this one, 240 divided by that number, 1233. And what do we get? Okay, what'd you hear? One, what'd you say?
Mine says 194.60.
Okay, so now this one, we need to do the same thing, right? So we're either gonna go back to this one and see if we can see the livable square footage. Is that the one that we're on? Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I know, we're gonna see if we can see the livable square footage. So here it is, 1292. Is their livable square footage. So we're gonna take this 153, see the sold price, 153, and divide it by their livable square footage.
This is 1290, what?
1292. Are we all tracking how we did that? So we went back to the comparable, we looked at the livable square footage. Now we are going to add all four of those up and divide it by 4. So we're gonna add all of them up, divided by 4. So you just had to do it manually. And then what are we gonna get with that number? Putting all the pressure on her right here. Try not to stare at you intently.
I'm
Okay,
adding them all up.
so now you're gonna add all 4 together and divide it by 4 because we're finding the average. Right? So we're gonna add up all 4. And that's gonna give us what when you add it all up?
687.
Okay, 687. So you add it all up and divide it by 4?
No, that's adding it all up. I haven't divided by 4 yet.
171.
171.
Yep.
Okay, so then what do we do? What do we put the adjustment thing up there?
Divided by 2.
We're dividing it by 2. So what do we get?
85.
85. Or something. Okay, so then we're gonna go and we're gonna put 85 right here. Okay, that we've got the average. But what happens because that's a triangle listing? Nothing. So what do we need to do? So we had the square footage of what? 12. Okay, so we're gonna take 1352 minus the 1292, and we get what? 60. What are we doing with the 60? Times it by 85. What do we get? 5100. What are we doing with the 5100? Adding or subtracting? Why are we subtracting? We're adding because we're smaller and we need to be like our big guy, right? So we gotta add to it. So then we would manually, what was that number then? 51 what? Whatever, 100. So then we would manually have to put that number in because it's a triangle listing. So do we all, does that all, if you don't, just speak now, cause,
Yes.
okay, yes.
Okay, so I understood the 687 divided off the whole.
Okay.
Why did you divide 171?
Okay, so we took our 4 listings,
Uh-huh.
okay, remember, and we divided by 4, and that's our average price per square footage. Now, remember, when we talked earlier, the appraisers don't take that whole number. Because that whole number includes your lot value, your sinks, your features, your all of that. We only want wall space to wall space. So they're dividing that average square foot in half. Okay, so 50%. And that gives you your 85. Then you're gonna have to take the difference in square footages, that amount, times it by that amount, and whatever that number is, you're either adding or subtracting. And again, I highly recommend you go to our YouTube channel and watch those appraiser videos, because they really do talk about it and break it down to help you understand it a little bit more. So do you all understand that part?
Yes.
Okay, so what questions did you come here with CMAs and you still don't know? Don't be shy, because you came to the class for a reason. So what did you want to learn? What did you need to clarify? Is there anything you're, yes?
Is there any comparison for septic and septic?
No, not really. No, and just, you know, I don't try to overeducate, but if you're on septic, make sure you're getting your septic permits. Either as a buyer's agent or a seller's agent to verify those number of bedrooms before you advertise 4 bedrooms and the septic says 3. Just because there's 4 bedrooms, if the septic says 3, you can only advertise 3. And in your remarks, you can't say 4th room could be used as a bedroom. It's not true. It's only a 3-bedroom septic. So make sure you're verifying that. Also, what I've learned recently is I would highly recommend on your professional services disclosure, I talk about that in all my classes, I think that's your life-saving paperwork. I would add on there sewer scope. If they're on city public utilities, I would ask if they want a sewer scope. I personally bought a house that was a flip, and they redid all the plumbing in the house and they redid it to the clean out. Well, now a year later, I'm having all these issues and realize it's galvanized plumbing out to the back of the yard. And it's all full of root, I mean, it's $9,000 to replace. If I would have done a sewer scope, I would have seen that, and more of my clients are ordering sewer scopes even on public, because the public utility, especially if you're in Haymont or anything, it could be really old plumbing, it could be failing, and nobody covers that if it's in your yard. So, you know, that's something I would add to your professional services.
What is the price point for a sewer scope?
If you go through the home inspection company, it's $250, but if there's a clog or anything, they'll stop it and they won't give you the full report. If you go through a plumber, the plumber was $650. But they cleared what they could through the line until I could replace it, so it was a benefit of using the plumber versus the home inspection company. But as a consumer buying, they might just go through the home inspection company to see if there's a problem, but. And with values, again, if you go outside the neighborhood, so let me say that too. If you go outside the neighborhood, that's where you may go to Realist and you will look at lot values. So if I go outside the neighborhood and I go to a different, I go to a different neighborhood, I might take an observance, yeah, somebody's trying to get a hold of somebody. That's a strong vibration on her phone. You can come down here and look at lot values. So you'll see, oh, this one, okay. This one has land value 46, 40, so you see an average of 46, 40, whatever, I don't know why there's a one for 2024. But if I left the neighborhood and say I went to Summerfield East, I might have to pull up that property and look at lot values, right? Because if it's a huge difference, I'm not taking the whole difference. I'm not gonna take, if it's $20,000 difference, I'm not taking the $20,000 difference. But I am gonna take a percentage for a lot value difference. And that's why if you have waterfront, you should only be using waterfront properties. If you have a golf front, you only wanna use golf front, because again, that's a value. If you're in an HOA community, if you leave your neighborhood, I would gear towards HOA communities. So again, you're always looking at similar features, but if you have to take, now again, if you're in the same neighborhood, the lot values are normally not adjusting for because of lot use. You know, that half an acre versus 0.75, they're not adjusting for that. But if you're on a golf course, or you're on water and you're not, then you would probably come look at lot values and make an adjustment based on the value of the lot. Okay, what other questions?
When I use this as well, when I pull up a comp and it says none can be found, do I go outside of the area then?
So if you start in your neighborhood and there's no comps in your neighborhood, then where should we go?
To the.
Elementary school. If we can't find any in the elementary school, where do we go? Middle school. And then if we can't find any middle school, where do we go? High school. But let me give you an example though. If we're in Hope County, how many high schools does Hope County have?
Just
One.
Okay.
So I could be all the way down to 11 near Aberdeen, and then I could be by Wayside Road. So what's that mile range we talk about? 3 or under, ideally. I don't wanna go, 9 miles across the county to find a good comp when I know there's one a mile away. So that's where you can use that measuring tool. So if you're in Hope County and you're in that matrix, that's where you can then go to the map, when you're doing your searches. You could go to the map, put your address in of your comp. And then I could just draw, hey, I wanna go, 1 mile, oh, that's not what I wanna do, sorry. We'll grab that. Radius, I wanna go, and it will tell you, see that little line, 0.2, might say something else, but it tells you the mileage on there, so you could go that far out. And then it's only gonna pull the ones within that range that you picked, okay? So if you're in an area where you're just not finding comps, you might just come in here and do a 3 mile radius and see what pops up. And again, if you're stuck, you can always call an appraiser and say, hey, I'm out here on 211. How far would you go? Could I go across, town or whatever? The more unique property you have, the more fluid it is. But if you're a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a single car garage, you can't tell me you can't find some comps within 3 miles. So again, you want to start and then the further out you go, the more the house needs to be like yours. If you're in the same neighborhood, you could choose a 2-story, 1-story and mix it all up because you're in the same neighborhood. But once you leave that neighborhood, you want as like yours as possible. What other questions do we have?
Would that be the same for land?
Land is very similar. So you're going to look at land use. So first off, how is it rated? Is it commercial land? Is it residential? Is it multi-use, like agricultural? You're going to look at how the land is used. But then you can pretty much do the same thing. So you could go through the county, look at what's sold land wise, figure out your average acres. But land could be a lot different because can it be converted to commercial? Is it going to be a good neighborhood development? Because I could probably sell higher. So land has a little bit more flexibility, but you still have to be able to justify the pricing. And is it cleared? Like, is this lot all cleared, these 5 acres, and this one's all wooded and people are gonna have the expense? Wetlands on a property, reduce it to like $2,000 an acre, if that. So you'd have to look at how much wetlands is on there, and you could use your GIS and put the layers on it to show wetlands. So you could do that, and that will give you an idea too of how much is gonna be sold at the regular amount per acre, and then how many is gonna be sold for wetlands. And if you have a unique property on acreage and you can't find something similar, a lot of times you can piece it together. Find the most like house and then price the land and kind of piece it together as a package if you can't find one with the same acreage.
And you talked about the having all the trees or not having all the trees.
Yeah,
What would you deduct or add?
it depends. It depends. Are the trees able to be timbered? Are they leasing the land? Like, it all depends on that land. So is it pine trees? Is it other trees? Are they hardwood? I mean, it all factors in. So a lot of times if you have questions about land, what I do is I'll call either developers that I know or other people who do a lot of land and just kind of pick their brain and ask them. But again, too, don't work a field you don't know. Learn it first. Just because we have access to Charlotte, you probably shouldn't go sell in Charlotte. So if you've never sold commercial, you probably should get help with commercial. And if you've never sold land, then get help with land. Just because until you know you're best representing your client. What other questions? Anything? Nikia, anything I forgot to mention that you can think of? Nikia is the genius in the room. Okay, if you guys don't have anything else, that's all we got. Hopefully you all learned something new. Okay,
Thank you.
all right,
Thank you.
Complicated.
you did,
Also.
good, there you go. Yes.
Sure.